Good evening and welcome to the U Talk Show. Fun fact, Australia has what is referred to as a bicameral system of government. This is because it is run by two camels, known as the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister. Seriously, though, if that's how far your understanding of civics got, you're not alone. And as someone who does understand civics a little better, I can tell you having more words for how our government works doesn't necessarily make it sound like it's still a good idea. So we'd like to examine how we can make a government more representative of the people and less representative of party politics and backroom deals and desperately clawing to stay in power. Kyle, take us away.
Yes. So to be clear, the question that we are asking is how can we adapt Australia's parliamentary system to better serve the nation? Right, Horst?
I mean, serving the entire nation at once, I mean, personally, that would exhaust me. But, I don't have great stamina. So, but yes. Government for the people, not for the people who've already made it to the top.
Yes. So, okay, so there are a few issues which come to my mind, with we've talked at length about how to end corruption. So we won't waste too much time doing that here. Let's say that we've actually managed to end corruption. What are the next sort of big things that our parliamentary system is beguiled with? What flaws does it have? Horst is looking up the definition right now.
No.
Okay, for a second I thought you were looking up beguiled. It's like I use that word. No. You just start typing away. But yeah, so what are the main problems after corruption with our parliamentary system itself? I'm a bit of a systems guy. I started with programming systems in video games, and I learned that a good system produces better outcomes. So the main flaws in our parliamentary system, I think there's a couple. And the ones that I want to focus on, actually quite a few, but the ones that I want to focus on are the ones that cause partisanship the most, because partisan politics is in large part responsible for the inefficiency and ineptitude of our parliament itself to properly and effectively overcome the challenges that our nation faces. And so partisan politics are essentially, doing things because it's, for the party rather than for the nation, such as opposing the other party's legislation for no better reason than it's the other party's legislation and not our party's.
Isn't that what happened with Gonski and the NBN?
It's what happened with a lot more than that. Gonski, the NBN, the ETS even, although there was some, outside influences from different industries there as well. But effectively, it's happened with a lot of politics. Those definitely, a lot of policies, sorry, those included. And I'd say that the biggest reason for partisanship, in my opinion, is that the government itself is formed from a party. It is a party that forms government. And I think that is a really inefficient way of doing it, because that welcomes and almost ensures partisan politics. Whereas if
technically, I will just point out here that the party of government is a recent concept. Traditionally speaking, what happens is this has gotten real murky. The leader of the party that has won the election, this is how it is currently happening, goes to the Governor General, says, yo, I've got the numbers, let's do this. And the Governor General says, okay, form a government. And then the leader of the party grabs a bunch of the other people in the party who won their seats and goes, okay, you have these portfolios, you have these. Strictly speaking, there is no reason within the existing framework that someone who has enough confidence and the numbers to form government can't go to the Governor General outside of the party structure and say, yo, I'd like to form a government. These guys are with me.
Technically,
that could
true.
happen.
You are
It
actually
just
quite right there.
doesn't.
Yeah, technically you are quite right there. And in fact, there was a point in time, we mentioned this, I believe, in the last episode. There was a point in time where we had 3 different parties all having about a third of parliament each, and essentially us having 3 major parties. And in the same, I think, either year or 3-year period, it was either 1 year or 1 term, they all held government. Each of those parties forms government, and they each formed a minority government, actually. And so, so technically, yes, that is a technical possibility. It is not really a realistic possibility these days, at least for
Why
the
the
most
hell
part.
not, though? Like, this is what I'm saying. We have the existing framework in place to unhitch the party from the government. It needn't be that a party wins and everyone who isn't that party loses. It needn't be
I
that
think in
the
part,
party is like that the government is beholden to the party room.
I'm not sure if this is the whole answer or just part of it, but I think at the very least, in large part, it is due to politicians themselves. At some point in time, I'd say it's probably around the 50s, actually, is when this started, 50s and 60s. As it started very much when the second time Menzies was prime minister, was about when it started to settle into this 2-faction politics, whereas it was the coalition versus Labour. And so
Yep.
it's the politicians' fault because they treated it like that. And I think they treated it like that because it was kind of tradition passed on from the British Parliament. They essentially had the Tories and the
Tories
Labour,
and the
and
Whigs.
before that,
yeah, the Tories and the Whigs.
Was Tories and Whigs? I thought
yes.
I thought the Whigs. Okay, you're probably right.
In any case, though, what I'm going to point out here further is that I got distracted by thinking about the Tories and the Whigs.
You are welcome.
Yes, got it. The other end of this is another thing that we briefly alluded to in the last video, and that is the parliamentarians themselves treating the public with a certain level of contempt. Like, they don't know what's good for them. We do. And that's like, source. Just trust me, bro.
Yeah, and I think there's also another factor, actually, which I just comes to mind now, is also the media. Because the media, when they present politics, usually in a very crappy context, they present it in terms of left and right, an us versus them mentality. And
basic tribalism. It gets clicks, it sells newspapers, it gets views.
Yeah, and I've talked about how left and right, are just bullshit, vague, malleable terms that don't really mean anything politically. They don't mean anything concrete in the past. So, go and watch those episodes. I might link them in the description. But I think that's, I think in large part the media is also to blame for treating it as such, essentially treating it with that tribalistic us versus them mentality, and then the politicians doing very much the same.
Yeah, but outrage sells. The media's simplistic treatment of politics and policy is the inevitable endpoint of what has worked for them in the past. If the populace don't demand better, then they keep getting this recycled, regurgitated bile.
Yeah. It's kind of the very thing that we're actually trying to
counter here.
I guess yeah, counter. That's actually, I was going to say do better than, but yeah, we are basically trying to counter, this very tribalistic narrative. You'll notice that although we've talked about individual politicians and even certain parties in either a positive or a negative light, we very much haven't taken the side of any party, and we haven't taken the side of one of these
I
bullshit
mean,
pseudo factions in politics.
you did take the side of Jeremy Buckingham pretty
Yeah,
fucking hard,
but
and
he's
I
okay.
took the
He's
side
one
of
guy
shooters,
though.
fishers. I took the
Yeah,
side of shooters, fishers, and farmers very hard, but I also did that under the full understanding that they represent my interests as someone in regional New South Wales.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. So I mean, that's kind of
check if
fair.
political partisanship is right for you. Consult your doctor or pharmacist.
Yeah. So uh, honestly, I half feel like ending the episode on that joke, but there's more to talk about though. But yeah. So with that being said, it seems then that it is up to the cause of the problem is the way the media has treated it and the way politics is treated it, playing off our sort of innate tribalism, built into us through millions of years of evolution.
Yep.
And the key to solving this is twofold. First, we have to expect, demand, and then consciously ensure the development of better in our political system. And that's the first. And the second part of how to fix this is to actually formally create a better way of doing things in Parliament. Although technically parliaments, the government doesn't have to be a party, it ends up being that way through partisanship. And so we need to formally change the rules so that instead, or at least this is my opinion, we need to formally change the rules so that a party, instead of being government, or instead of the government being a political party, it is instead formed by, say, the prime minister and deputy prime minister being able to choose the cabinet together from any party or even independents. And although technically that can happen, I think
Realistically, it
formally
would be
having
political
that,
suicide.
well,
And we need
I
to
mean,
make
look,
it not be.
well, yes, it would be political suicide to do that now. But if those were the formal rules and that was what was expected, it'd simply be the order of the day, and it would decrease the amount of partisanship in politics. As instead of fighting against another party who happens to be government, you then be working in part with former fellow party members and also colleagues of yours who you've known and worked with in the past. Therefore, in multiple ways, they're decreasing the partisanship and the reason for partisanship.
Yeah. So we're making a situation where, as I've previously advocated for Trish Doyle, you're voting for people and you're working with people. You're not voting for parties and working with parties.
Yes.
Everyone is expected to do their job with a certain degree of dignity, honor, and competence.
Yes. Essentially removing I guess it's removing the party factor from the process of whether or not to support legislation, and instead putting it on whether or not people work well together, and whether or not the ideas in the legislation itself are actually good and will do well for the nation.
Right. Yeah.
And unless you've got more to say, I think that will end it, because we kind of hit it in a nutshell there, even though we're actually quite on time.
Good night, Seattle.
Actually.